Wellness Wednesday on Fox 54 News, sponsored by Regenesis.
Cervical cancer is when abnormal cells of the cervix grow uncontrollably, usually caused by persistent HPV infection, and it impacts women by causing symptoms like abnormal bleeding, pelvic pain, painful intercourse. When left untreated, it can spread to other body parts and cause additional symptoms. So cervical cancer can be screened with a pap smear. We want to remember that screening, the role for that is to catch disease before the onset of symptoms, because typically that results in earlier treatment and better outcomes. But a pap smear and HPV testing looks at the health of the cervical cells along with if there's a presence of the human papillomavirus. This is typically done through a pelvic exam with a healthcare provider. If there are abnormal results, then additional testing would be done to confirm a diagnosis. So typically cervical cancer screening starts at the age of 21. It's done every 3 to 5 years, depending on the results. But more so than just worrying about how often the pap smear should be done, you want to make sure that you're getting annual well woman exams. A pap smear may be done as part of that visit, and because even when you're not having a pap smear, you can have symptoms of or evidence of cervical cancer that could be caught during an exam, even when a pap smear is not due. So typically starting at age 21 for most women, repeated every 3 to 5 years depending on age, and then additional recommendations or future screening would be based on the result. A lot of the time we can have a symptom, or what I see in my experience and what we see here in our clinic is a woman can have a symptom, specifically abnormal bleeding. They go for an initial workup, but the symptom never improves. Instead of taking that first initial workup as, oh, everything was fine, if you continue to have problems, it's really important that you go back to your doctor and say, hey, I know we talked about this last time, but I'm continuing to have the same problem. Can we have some additional evaluation?
Alabama is it's kind of well known that we have a rate that's much higher when it comes to cervical cancer when it comes to the rest of the country. I guess can you talk a little bit about that and what that means for women around the state?
Certainly. Alabama is actually in the top five when it comes to not only mortality or death rates, but also incidence. So the number of women that get cervical cancer than the nation. And that really is unacceptable because we know now that we can actually end cervical cancer. We can eliminate this cancer. And that's exciting news. This is the only cancer at this point that we can actually eliminate, similar to how we eliminated polio.
I guess when you talk about elimination, I assume that has a lot to do with the HPV immunization vaccine.
It does. HPV is actually what causes nearly all cervical cancers. And that virus we now have an immunization for. So if women were to get the HPV vaccination beginning at age 9, all the way up really until 25, but ultimately up to 45, before they are exposed to that virus, then they would not get cervical cancer. So a long-term goal, if we want to eliminate cervical cancer, is to start vaccinating our boys and girls starting at age 9 before they are exposed to the virus. The reason, though, that we can say we can eliminate it is not just the vaccine alone, because we have a lot of women that were not vaccinated right now. So the short-term steps to take to get us toward elimination or ending this cancer is to make sure that women are screened. And when they are screened, to make sure that if they have an abnormal result, meaning if they have the HPV virus or if they have precancer, that they go back to their doctor. And shockingly, most women do not go back to the doctor when they get an abnormal finding.
Can you talk a little bit about the testing process and where you can maybe find some of those testing centers around the North Alabama area?
Absolutely. First of all, there's the HPV vaccination. So the HPV vaccination is covered by most insurances, including Medicaid. And for children under the age of 19 who maybe don't have insurance, there is a program called Vaccines for Children, or VFC. And you can go to a health department or a federally qualified healthcare center or community center or most clinicians. And if they are a provider of the VFC program, then they can provide that HPV vaccination at no cost. So really, everyone should have access to the HPV vaccination, no matter what their insurance status is. The same is almost true for screening. So when it comes to screening for cervical cancer, it's an HPV PAP test. We're all familiar with PAP tests, but not necessarily familiar with the co-testing or the HPV PAP test. So women who are 30 or older should get the HPV PAP test. Together, that can diagnose over 90% of whether or not you have the virus or you have precancer. And if a physician does that test and finds that there's a virus or a precancer, when the person goes back, then it can be decided whether or not we need to remove the precervical cancer, which would just be a simple test, a biopsy, and removal, or it maybe they just need to monitor it more closely and see if HPV maybe resolves itself and goes away. So that test too is covered by insurance, and there should not be a copay or a deductible or anything. And for women that don't have insurance, my division actually runs the Alabama Breast and Cervical Cancer Early Detection Program. We call it ABC. So in that program, if you have a low income and no insurance and you're age 40 and older, or if you've had an abnormal result from maybe a family planning visit or something and can't afford the follow-up, give us a call, because we are able to not only pay for that screening, but if you've had an abnormal finding, we can also pay for diagnostic tests like the one I was telling you about, the biopsy. It's actually called a colposcopy. And then if there's a diagnosis of invasive cancer, then we can also, there's a program to get you on Medicaid for treatment. So as long as you're a citizen, we'll be able to essentially hold your hand every step of the way and provide complete coverage, free screening and diagnostic care as well as treatment.
I have to assume that ABC is also working with another Department of Public Health program, Operation Wipeout, that kind of brings these two together to kind of tell women around the state, hey, there are programs out there. You don't have to fight this alone.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be part of Operation Wipeout. So that is a three-person partnership between myself with ADPH, Dr. Isabel Scarinci at UAB, and then Lori at the Rotary International in Birmingham. And the three of us, are the leaders or the co-leaders for Operation Wipeout, which is a statewide effort where everyone is welcome to be part of, and actually everyone actually has a role and can do something to make sure that women know we can eliminate cervical cancer. So Operation Wipeout really is an effort. It's got three pillars. One is HPV vaccination for 9 to 45, essentially, but before you get exposed to the virus. And so the younger, the better. The second step is screening with the HPV PAP test. If you're 30 and over, you should get the co-test. If you're in your 20s, then probably you'll just get the PAP test, because they want to see if the HPV virus actually goes away. When it sticks around is when we start to have problems with cervical cancer. And then the third pillar is follow-up, making sure those women who do have a finding go back, because just having a finding doesn't mean you have cancer. It just means that we need to take a look at it and maybe even remove it and end it before it gets where it's invasive cervical cancer. So this effort, Operation Wipeout, invites all women in every role in society, be it a parent or a church goer or a business leader or a survivor or a retiree or a nurse, any and everyone can learn just a little bit more and feel comfortable with talking about it, and then tell every woman you know, did you know we can eliminate cervical cancer? And there's 3 steps. And if you have any questions, go to operationwipeout.org.
Fox 54 Plus has your news, sports, and weather. Start your evening with Fox 54 at 5:30, delivering the latest headlines and live reports straight from the scene. Then, stay informed with Fox 54 News at 9, featuring your Tennessee Valley certified most accurate weather impact team, tracking everything from tornado threats to traffic delays during severe weather. Fox 54 Sports Extra brings you more of what sports fans crave, with deeper insights, expert analysis, and all the action that matters most. On Fox 54 Plus, you'll also find Alabama politics, plus 24/7 weather radar and real-time forecasts to keep you ahead of the storm. Looking for a quick recap? Don't miss Fox 54 Week in Review, highlighting the biggest stories of the week. Jumpstart your morning with Morning Rush. Fast-paced news updates featured with uplifting stories from across the globe. Get your entertainment fix with Getting Real, where we break down movie reviews, top 10 lists, and spotlight the newest film. Die Hard fan? Locked On Sports dives deep into the Crimson Tide, the Tigers, college rivalries, and pro action. True Crime Warrior Style? Killer Cases brings you gripping real-life stories that stick with you. Hungry for more? Cooking with Style serves up mouth-watering recipes that are easy to make and impossible to resist. From movie previews before you head to the theater with Take a Look, to must-know headlines from across the region and around the world with In the News. Watch all of these shows on demand and also on the Fox 54 News app, available on Android and iOS devices, streaming 24/7.